11 days before my younger sister moved into the house I used to share with my ex-husband, I drove to pick up my son from school and was told I couldn't take him home. I want to be precise about what happened, because the details matter here. This isn't the kind of story that becomes clearer in the broad strokes. It becomes clearer when you know the small things, the time on the clock, the name on a form, the specific sound a filing cabinet makes when someone pulls the right folder out. My name is Darby Neville. I'm 32 years old. I work as a pharmacy technician at a hospital in Hamilton, Ontario, which means I spend my evenings tracking exactly what goes where and when. Every medication dispensed is logged with a timestamp. Every swap is initialed. Every discrepancy is noted. You don't stay in that job unless you're comfortable writing the same careful sentence over and over. This happened, at this time, and I was the one who was there. I've been doing it long enough that the habit followed me home. I keep copies of things. I save receipts. I take screenshots without knowing why, and only find out later that I needed them. That habit is the reason my son is still with me. Arthur was 7 years old when this happened. He liked hockey cards and peanut butter on crackers, not sandwiches. He had a plastic dinosaur named Chomper, who had been missing one leg since November, and who he refused to replace because, he told me, that was just how Chomper was now. Every morning before school, while he ate breakfast, I tucked a note into his lunch kit. Nothing long, just a sentence, sometimes a small drawing. He'd read them at the table with his friends after he found them, which I only knew because his teacher, Ms. Reyes, mentioned it once. And I had to look out the window for a moment. You work to keep the small things. That's what I've learned. Everything important is made out of small things, and the people who understand that are the ones who know what's actually worth protecting. I'll start where the ground dropped out. It was a Thursday afternoon in late September, a day I was supposed to start my evening shift at 6. I'd arranged the pickup the way I always did on those days, collect Arthur at 3:30, spend the afternoon with him, and have my downstairs neighbor, Nell, come over at 5:15 so I could leave for work. The school secretary, Sherry Park, is usually behind the desk when I come in. She'd waved me through 100 times. That afternoon, she looked at me and picked up the phone instead of buzzing Arthur's classroom. "Mrs. Neville," she said carefully, "can you wait just a moment? I'll get Mr. Huang." I waited. I noticed, because I notice things, that the pickup authorization sheet, the one kept in a binder by the front counter, had been turned face down on the desk. Jeff Huang was the vice principal. He was the kind of administrator who moved slowly on purpose, like someone who had learned that slowing down was the job. He came out of his office, and behind him came Kara. I hadn't known she was in the building. My younger sister is 4 years younger than me. She's the one people look at when we walk into a room together. Not because she's unkind, but because she's always known how to fill a space in a way that draws the space toward her. Growing up, I was the older one who did things quietly, and Kara was the one who lit up. I made peace with that a long time ago. I thought I understood her. She was holding a manila envelope against her chest. She was dressed like someone who had planned to be taken seriously. "You work evenings," she said, not quietly, loud enough for Sherry and 2 other parents waiting near the door to catch every word. "You're in counseling. Arthur deserves a stable home right now, and I want to give him that." I have thought about that sentence almost every day since. Not because of what it revealed about Kara. I understood, later, exactly what it revealed about Kara. But because of what it assumed, that the woman who had lost so much to her would absorb this too, and walk away from her child without making a sound. Welcome to Mr. Nathaniel Stories. If you're here for stories about family, justice, and refusing to stay small when everything is on the line, drop a comment and make sure you're subscribed. Because this one doesn't end where they planned. I was in counseling. That part was true. I'd started seeing Dr. Bronwyn Lau the year before, because my marriage had ended in a specific and painful way, and I had decided that if I was going to raise Arthur mostly on my own, I was going to do it as a person who had actually dealt with what happened, not someone who had packed it down somewhere and was hoping it held. Going to Dr. Lau was not a sign that I was broken. It was the opposite. But I had made the mistake of trusting someone with it, and that someone had kept it like a key. I did not raise my voice. "I'd like Mr. Huang to open Arthur's original registration file," I said. "The one I signed when I enrolled him." I'd like to say it felt powerful, asking that. It didn't. It felt like grabbing for the only solid thing in the room. Mr. Huang looked at me for a moment, then at Kara, then went to his office and came back with a blue folder. He opened it on the counter between us, the way you'd open a book you want both people to read at the same time. Emergency contacts, my name, Nell's name, and my mother's name, because there had been a period after the separation when my schedule and Nell's overlapped badly, and my mother had sometimes collected Arthur during those gaps. 3 names, written in my hand at registration. Kara's name had never been on that list. Not once, not even as a secondary contact. I put my finger on the authorization sheet that had been turned face down on the counter. "Someone changed that today," I said. "That wasn't my list." He picked up the sheet and turned it over. Clipped to the back was a set of documents I had never seen in my life. I watched Mr. Huang's face move through 3 or 4 different expressions in about 4 seconds. He read. He read again. He set the whole stack down and was quiet for a moment, and when he looked up, he was very careful. "This isn't an update to your pickup contacts," he said. "This is a motion to vary custody. And behind it," he turned to the next page, "is a consent to relocate Arthur to another province with a date set for next month." At the bottom of that page was a signature that was supposed to be mine. I had never seen that document before in my life. "I need everyone to stay right here," Mr. Huang said. He walked to the office door and clicked the lock from the inside, not to trap anyone, but to keep the paperwork in the room and the situation contained before he understood it fully. He asked Sherry to check that Arthur was still in class with Miss Reyes, and to tell her that pickup was running a little late. Everything was fine. Arthur should keep on with his afternoon. Sherry went without asking why. Kara's composure cracked, just slightly. "This is a misunderstanding. I'm his aunt. I was coordinating things. Tristan and I are planning to move, and we thought—" "One moment, please," Mr. Huang said quietly. He called Hamilton Police Service, and then the school board's legal line, in that order. Constable Yates arrived inside 20 minutes. She was methodical and patient, and she listened to both of us with the same neutral attention. Kara told her I worked evenings and was in counseling. She delivered it the way someone delivers a prepared line, soft, calm, slightly clinical, so that it would read less like an accusation and more like concern. There is a particular kind of anger that comes from watching someone take the things you trusted them with and use them as a weapon. Not a stranger, someone who grew up in the same house as you, someone who knew that the reason you'd started counseling was because of her. I felt that anger in the office. I also felt Dr. Lau's voice underneath it, reminding me that anger is information, not instruction. I answered Constable Yates plainly. I said I had never authorized any relocation. I said my original registration paperwork existed and was on the counter. I said I kept copies of things. She asked me one question that told me she understood more than Kara expected. "Do you have records of where you were on the evening these documents were likely prepared?" I told her I worked hospital shifts. Every medication I dispensed was logged. Every badge swipe was time-stamped. She wrote that down and nodded once. They released Arthur to me. The school's original file said what it said. In the car, buckled into his booster seat with Chomper under his arm, Arthur was quiet for exactly 1 block. Then, Kara said we're going to Calgary. She said I'm getting my own room there with a Calgary Flames jersey on the door. I kept my eyes on Wellington Street. I kept my voice the way it needed to be. Did she? She said not to tell you yet because it's a surprise. I thought about the consent form, and the motion to vary custody, and the signature that wasn't mine. And I understood. If I had arrived at that school a single day later, or let any of this sit for even one more week, Arthur might have been on his way to Calgary before any court had a chance to hear a word of it. Not taken in some dramatic way, relocated on paper, with documents that looked official, into a new school and a new city and a new province, and by the time anyone untangled whether the signature was real, it would already look like normal. A new room, a new city, a new family picture. And I would have been the unstable one, the one who worked evenings and went to counseling and couldn't keep up. I asked Arthur which dinosaur he thought could beat Chomper in a fair fight. He spent the rest of the drive working through a very thorough argument about the T-Rex, and I listened to every word of it. That night, after he was asleep, Nell sat on my kitchen floor with me and didn't tell me it would be fine. She told me to back up everything before I said another word to any of my family. I remembered, then, an email notification I'd received 3 weeks earlier. An unfamiliar device had signed into my school parent portal. I'd told myself it was a glitch. I had taken a screenshot, because I take screenshots of everything. It had been sitting in my phone like a stone I hadn't picked up yet. It stopped being a glitch. Here is what I did, and I want to tell you the how of it, because the how matters. The first thing was the portal access log. I went to the school board's office and requested it formally, in writing, as the account holder. The log came back specific and plain. My emergency contacts had been edited from a device that wasn't mine on a Thursday night. The timestamp on that change was 10:52 p.m. I pulled my hospital records for the same evening. I had badged into the pharmacy at 6:41 p.m. My dispensing log showed continuous activity through the shift, medications initialed, timestamps on every entry, because that's what the dispensing system does, because the dispensing system is what keeps patients alive, and there is no room in it for gaps. I had been on the floor at 10:52 p.m., checking a unit dose cart on the evening ward, while someone sat at a computer somewhere and quietly replaced my name on my son's pickup list with my sister's. I could not have made that change. I was on shift. The log does not lie. The second thing was the signatures. The relocation consent form carried a signature that was supposed to be mine. I set it next to things I had actually signed: Arthur's original enrollment form, the separation agreement. My signature is fast and slanted, the same way it's been since I was a teenager. What was on that form was upright and careful, the way handwriting looks when someone is trying to reproduce something they're looking at rather than doing something habitual. The motion to vary custody had 2 signatures. One was mine, and it was the forgery. The other was Tristan's. And Tristan's was real. I had known his handwriting since we were in our mid-20s. The way he crosses it before the rest of the word is done. The specific angle of his initials, that was his hand. He had signed a document to move his son out of his mother's province. He hadn't been reluctant. He hadn't been pressured. He had picked up a pen and signed. I sat with that for a long time. The third thing was the seal. The documents carried a Commissioner of Oaths stamp. In Ontario, that's the official record of someone swearing before a designated authority that a document is true. The stamp had a name, Linda Ferreira. So I found Linda Ferreira, and I called her, and I explained carefully that her stamp appeared on documents I believed were fraudulent. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "My stamp is on something I never witnessed." I said yes. "I need to see it," she said, "because I've never commissioned anything with that file number. And that commission number isn't even current." Someone had lifted her name and fabricated her seal. A real person, a real credential, a real professional in Brampton who had nothing to do with any of us. Just a stamp and a number, borrowed and pressed onto a lie to make it look like the law had been satisfied. She agreed, without hesitation, to put that in writing. I brought everything to Constable Yates the following week. The access log, the pharmacy records, Linda Ferreira's statement, the 2 signatures laid side by side. Constable Yates spread it out methodically and told me the forged Commissioner of Oaths seal was serious on its own. She told me the pharmacy records layered against the portal log made it very difficult for anyone to claim I'd authorized the changes. She told me not to give Kara or Tristan a detailed picture of the evidence before it was all documented, because people who know exactly what exists have a habit of making things disappear. Then she said, "You did the right thing keeping your own records. Most people don't think to. Once it comes down to word against document, the document wins." For the first time since the school office, I felt the ground stop shifting under me. I also saw a family law lawyer that week. She was careful and direct, and she told me more than once not to overstate what I could personally prove. The police would handle what was criminal. The courts would handle what was legal. My job was smaller than I'd been treating it. "Keep the record intact," she said. "Protect Arthur, and don't give anyone a reason to call you unstable by acting like it." The pressure from my family came in waves, the way it always does in mine, softly, persistently, through channels of worry and casseroles and group chats. My mother called and said she was worried about me, which in her vocabulary meant that someone had already told her a version of the story and she'd believed it. "Kara is beside herself," she said. "Can we just sit down together before this gets worse?" A cousin sent me a message saying Tristan and Kara were only thinking of Arthur's stability. An aunt I hadn't spoken to in over a year wrote that bringing legal matters into a family situation never helped the child. Not one of them asked about the Commissioner of Oath's seal. Not one of them asked what had been clipped to the back of that authorization sheet. It is easier to decide the person making noise is the problem than to ask what made her start making noise. Kara called once. I let it go to voicemail, then called back, because I wanted to hear her voice when it wasn't performing for a room. "You've made your point," she said. "Cool and even. Stop dragging this out and think about what this looks like to a judge. Evenings shifts, counseling, a 2-bedroom apartment on the mountain, and then there's what Tristan and I are offering, a house, 2 full-time incomes, a proper setup. You know what the math looks like." "The counseling is because of you," I said, "because of what you and Tristan did." A pause. "That's not fair." "I know," I said. "I also know you submitted a consent to relocate with my signature on it, and I didn't sign it." Another pause. Longer. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, and hung up. But before she did, she sent me something she probably did not intend as confirmation. A photograph of a bedroom in what looked like a Calgary apartment. A shelf. A hockey-themed duvet. And on the wall, a wooden nameplate that read Arthur Neville Warwick, his full legal name, my surname, and Tristan's together, as if she'd already started writing the story of who he belonged to. I looked at that photograph until my hands stopped shaking. Then I saved it, and I put it in the folder. My mother came to my door 3 days later with a casserole, which in my family is how serious conversations are opened. "Just come to dinner Saturday," she said. "Sit down with everyone. Sign the consent papers, drop the complaint, and things can still be civil before they leave. Your father and I just want peace." She believed that. She was standing on my doorstep, genuinely believing she was asking something reasonable. She had called the school and vouched for Kara. She had handed over my counseling schedule and my work hours the way you hand over information when you trust both people. She hadn't known what was being built underneath her. That distinction would matter later, more than I expected. My father called that evening. He had always been a man who framed things as decisions rather than requests. "Come Saturday," he said. "We'll sit down like adults. You'll sign a withdrawal of the police complaint and a consent to relocate, and we can all move past this before the move." He did not ask how Arthur was. I told him I'd be there. Nell wanted me to post the bedroom photo, post the fake seal, post the forged signatures, post the whole timeline, and let every person in the family group chat see exactly what Kara had done. She wasn't wrong that Kara had earned it. But I kept thinking about what a fire like that actually burns. A public post like that doesn't stay contained. It becomes the first thing that comes up when someone searches our names. Arthur would be old enough to search his own family one day. I didn't want him to find the worst week of our lives preserved forever, with a photograph of his supposed Calgary bedroom in the middle of it. I don't want to win the group chat, I told Nell. I want Arthur to be safe, and I want to be able to look at myself. Those are the only two things. I said something similar to Dr. Lau the week before the dinner, when I finally told her how they had used the therapy against me. They took the bravest decision you made, she said, and called it evidence that you couldn't be trusted. Yes, I said, and I cried finally for the first time since the school office. Not from weakness, from the specific exhaustion of having to defend the thing that was holding you together. Coming here and keeping coming here, Dr. Lau said, is a record. It's the record of someone doing the hard work of staying whole for her child. Don't let them rename it. I carried that sentence into Saturday. It was a cool October evening, the gray, clear kind Hamilton does well, just above cold. I stood on my parents' porch on Scenic Drive with the folder under my arm and looked through the window at a table that thought it already knew how the night would end. Cara and Tristan were there, my parents, and Tristan's aunt, Pamela, who had always been more decent to me than most of his family, and who, from the window, looked like she wasn't entirely sure why she'd been invited. A document sat at my place beside a pen. Cara opened the door smiling. "Come in," she said. "Let's just get this done and have dinner." I came in. I set the folder down on the table. I did not pick up the pen. Before anything gets signed, I said, "I'd like to open this first." My father sighed the way he sighs when he has already decided the answer. My mother looked at the folder like it might be impolite. I set down Arthur's original school registration form. One primary parent and legal guardian at enrollment. My name. Cara's name has never appeared on that file. I set down the next page. So when Mr. Huang opened the pickup authorization sheet on Thursday, and her name was where mine should have been, someone changed it. The school did not make a clerical error. It was a miscommunication, Cara said, easy as anything. I'd been helping with pickups, and Tristan asked me to update. I set down the portal access log. My parent account was accessed from a device that isn't mine at 10:52 on a Thursday night. I placed the pharmacy records beside it. I badged into my hospital shift at 6:41 that evening. My dispensing log shows continuous entries through the night, including at 10:52. I was on the floor, on shift. I could not have made that change. The temperature in the room shifted. My mother turned from the stove slowly and looked at Cara in a way that was not yet understanding, but was the beginning of it. I set Linda Ferreira's statement on the table. The relocation documents carry a Commissioner of Oaths stamp. Her name is Linda Ferreira. She has never met me. She has never met Cara. She never commissioned those documents, and the certificate number under her seal isn't even current. She's put that in writing and will say so to anyone who asks. Tristan had not spoken yet. He was about to have a reason to. I laid the final 2 pages down side by side and turned them so everyone at the table could see. 2 signatures on the consent to relocate, I said. This one is supposed to be mine. I moved my finger to the first line. It's a forgery. It's drawn, not written. Too upright, too careful. My signature moves fast. It always has. I moved my finger to the second line. This one is Tristan's, and it's real. Pamela looked up from the page. He signed it, I said. No one forced his hand. My name was fabricated, but his wasn't. He signed a document to move his son to another province behind the other parent's back, and let a forged signature stand beside his as though I had agreed. Pamela stood up so fast her chair caught on the floor. "Tristan," she said, "what did you do?" It wasn't a question. He looked at the table. He looked at his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and flat. "I'm his father. I have rights too." "You have joint legal custody," I said. "That means we decide together. There's a process for relocation in Ontario. You file a motion, the court considers it, both parents have standing. You didn't use that process because a judge might not have given you what you wanted, and a consent form with a forged signature would have moved Arthur across the country before anyone could object. By the time a court sorted out whether my signature was real, it would already look like a settled arrangement. Pamela lowered herself back into her chair slowly, one hand flat on the table, staring at her nephew. "I raised you better than this," she said. He didn't answer her either. Kara tried to take the room back. "You're twisting everything. I love that boy." "I know you do," I said, "and I meant it. I have never not meant it. That's the part I can't get past. You love him and you still did this. Because for you, loving something and wanting to own it have always been the same motion." I turned to my parents, and I softened, because this was the part I had thought about most carefully. "You gave Kara my schedule," I said. "You called the school and said I was unstable. You handed her my counseling appointments like they were proof of something wrong with me, because you were worried and you trusted her." I paused. "But the forged seal isn't yours. The fake signature isn't yours. The Calgary bedroom with his name already on the wall, that isn't yours. She let you believe you were protecting your grandson, while she built something criminal underneath both of you. She used you too." My father's face had gone gray. He looked at Kara the way you look at someone when you realize the story they told you was missing half its pages. My mother had her hand over her mouth and was not making a sound. I set down the last page, the consent form, with its relocation date printed clearly, and beside it, the photograph. "Arthur Neville Warwick," I said, pointing to the name on the wall. "Already on a sign. Already hanging in a room in Calgary. Set up before any court ever heard a word of this, so that by the time anyone stood in front of a judge it would already look normal. He was the thing you moved to make the story true." Kara's composure finally left her entirely, not loudly, quietly, which was worse. "If you were a better mother," she said, "you wouldn't need counseling in the first place." The table went completely silent. There it was. Not concern for Arthur, not a genuine belief that she could give him something better. Just that. The oldest wound she had found in me turned into the reason she thought she deserved my son. I looked at her and answered in the steadiest voice I have ever used. "I'm in counseling because of you," I said. "Because of what you and Tristan did. You broke something and then pointed at the fact that I was repairing it and called it proof I was broken. That sentence you just said tells everyone in this room exactly what this was about." I gathered the pages, one at a time, back into the folder. "I'm Arthur's mother. Every evening I'm at that hospital, I'm there for him. Every morning I'm in that apartment, I'm there for him. And from now on, who gets to be part of his life is my decision, and my decision starts with the truth." I looked at my mother and I softened just slightly, because she had been crying without sound for several minutes, and she hadn't known the whole picture before tonight. "You handed her ammunition because you trusted her," I said. "I understand that. But you vouched for her at that school, and I need time to hold that." I stood up. My father said my name once, quietly. Pamela sat with her hand flat on the table, looking at her nephew the way you look at a stranger wearing a familiar face. "The police have their copies," I said at the door. "So does the school board's legal office." This stopped being a family conversation the day someone drew my name on a legal document. I drove home. Nell met me at the door. She could see it on my face, and she didn't ask me to say it out loud. It was done. The move to Calgary did not happen. I didn't stop it. The evidence stopped it. A motion to vary custody filed the same week that a Hamilton Police Service investigation opens on a forged Commissioner of Oaths stamp, and a falsified parent's signature does not read well to a court. The family lawyer I'd consulted told me the timeline alone was damaging. The school board corrected Arthur's file and restricted it so that no changes could be made without me present in person with photo identification. Kara was barred from school property pending the investigation. Tristan's access to Arthur became supervised because a man who signs a relocation document without the other parent's knowledge does not get handed unsupervised weekends as if nothing happened. The relocation consent was voided before it ever took effect. The next month came and went, and Arthur woke up in his own room in his own apartment in Hamilton with a note in his lunch kit. The forged Commissioner of Oaths stamp was referred to the appropriate authorities. That part is not mine to narrate in detail, because I'm not a lawyer and I have no interest in performing that piece of the story. What I can tell you is that it did not disappear, because the move fell through. My parents I did not cut off, though part of me wanted to. About 3 weeks after the dinner, my mother came to my door with nothing in her hands. No casserole, no prepared speech. She said she had believed Kara's version because it was easier than the alternative, and that she was ashamed of herself, and that she understood if I needed distance. I opened the door part of the way. I'm not shutting you out, I told her, but I'm not going to be the one who smooths this over for everyone again. If you want to be in Arthur's life, you come in on my terms now, and my terms start with telling me the truth about what you know when you know it. She said she understood. Time will tell if she does. I kept seeing Dr. Lau. If anything, I go more steadily now, not because I'm falling apart, but because I proved to myself that keeping that appointment is not something anyone gets to hold over me. I decided that in Mr. Huang's office, and I've held it since. Arthur took a little while to feel settled again in ways he couldn't name. For a few weeks, he'd ask at bedtime whether I'd still be there when he woke up. I told him the truth each time. Yes, or Nell would be, and no one was going to take him anywhere without me. Slowly, the asking stopped. He asked me one evening, in the easy way kids change the subject from things too large for them, whether we were still going to the CNE this summer. Same as last year, I said. And Nell. And Nell. He was satisfied. He didn't ask about the Calgary room again, and I didn't bring it up, and slowly it stopped being a thing he was waiting for. About 3 weeks after everything settled, I walked Arthur to his classroom because I had the morning off, and he liked it when I did. The school had printed a new emergency contact sheet, 1 page, in the binder by the front desk. Arthur stopped in front of it, because he's at the age where he sounds out anything with letters on it. D, he said, ARBY. He looked up at me, pleased with himself. That's you, that's my mum. That's me, I said. 1 name on that sheet, mine. No documents clipped to the back, no Calgary bedroom with a name already on the wall, no seal from a woman who had never met us, just a single line in the space where a single line belonged. There is a great deal someone can forge. Kara proved that. They can copy a seal and edit an account at 10:52 at night and stand at a school counter and say the words out loud to a room full of strangers. They can put your child's name on a sign before the court ever hears about it. There is quite a lot they can fake. But no one can forge being there. No one drew my hand onto 7 years of lunch kit notes. No one else badged into that pharmacy at 6:41 so a ward of strangers could get their evening medications on time. No one else learned which crackers Arthur prefers, or why Chomper's missing leg is non-negotiable, or what to say when he checks at bedtime that the morning is still going to happen. You cannot counterfeit the mornings. I was there for every one of them, and my son knows it. And that is the one document that was never, not for a single moment, up for forgery. If you take anything from this, take the small, unglamorous things. Know who is actually authorized to pick up your child, and make sure it is on paper, in the original file, not just in an understanding you assume everyone shares. Protect your parent portal passwords like they matter, because they do. Keep your own copies of everything that proves who you are to your children. And if someone ever takes the fact that you asked for help, your job, your schedule, the honest steps you took to hold yourself together, and uses them as evidence against you, believe your own record over their version of you. Then, go find the people whose job it is to see the truth and let them carry the parts that are theirs to carry. I'm Darby Neville, I work evenings, I go to counseling, and I am Arthur's mother. All 3 of those things are true at the same time, and only one of them was ever anyone else's business. One morning, a few weeks after it was all over, Arthur came into the kitchen holding a folded piece of paper. He'd found it in the inside pocket of his winter jacket, the note I'd packed in his lunch kit the day of the school pickup. I'd forgotten to replace it. He'd held on to it without telling me. He unfolded it and read it aloud, slowly, the way he reads things he wants to be sure he has right. "Have a good day, Bug. I'll be there at 3:30, same as always." He refolded it carefully and put it back in his pocket. "You were," he said.